The great hall of Valdris Prime stretched wide like a crystal cave. Lights from 12 different suns filtered through the transparent walls, casting rainbow colors across the floor. Today was special. Today marked 1,000 years since the last Great Council meeting. Elder Thoxville walked slowly to the center of the hall. His old legs moved carefully on the smooth stone floor. The reptilian being had lived for over 3,000 years, and his green scales showed the marks of time and many battles. Scars crossed his face and arms like a map of old wars. Around him sat the representatives of 12 powerful species. The crystalline collective sparkled in their translucent bodies. The avian lords preened their bright feathers. The machine empire hummed with electronic sounds. All of them had come to hear the wisdom of the elders. Young ones, Thoxville began, his voice echoing through the hall. I have seen many wars. I have watched empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. But today I must tell you about the one species that must never be touched, never be challenged, never be threatened. A young representative from the Canine Federation raised her paw. Elder Thoxville, which species could be so dangerous that even the great empires fear them? The old reptile's eyes grew distant. They call themselves humans. They live on a small blue world circling a yellow star. They look weak. They look fragile. They live for less than 100 years. This makes other species think they are easy to defeat. Elder Cythera of the Crystalline Collective stood up. Her body was like clear glass and light passed through her in beautiful patterns. The humans appear to be nothing special. They have no natural weapons like claws or fangs. Their skin tears easily. They cannot fly or breathe underwater without help. Yet, Thoxville continued, they are the most dangerous species in our galaxy. The hall fell silent. Even the machine empire stopped their electronic humming. 2,000 years ago, Thoxville said, the mighty hegemony thought as you do now. They ruled over 500 worlds. Their fleets numbered in the millions. Their warriors were bred for battle from birth. He activated an old holographic projector. The image showed a massive space battle. Ships exploded in bright flashes of light. The view was shaky and unclear, like it came from a damaged recording device. The hegemony decided that human space would make a good addition to their empire. The humans had only 57 worlds then. Their ships looked old and simple. Their weapons seemed outdated. The hegemony sent 10,000 warships to demand their surrender. A young officer from the Stellar Dominion laughed. 10,000 ships against primitive humans? That should have been easy. Thoxville's expression became very serious. Only 3 hegemony ships returned. The laughter stopped immediately. The humans call it the Omega Incident. We call it the day we learned that appearances mean nothing. The hegemony survivors spoke of things that made no sense. Human ships that moved like they shared one mind. Weapons that turned their own power against them. And worst of all, humans who fought not for conquest but for something they called honor. Elder Velthon of the Avian Lords spread his golden wings. Surely you exaggerate, old friend. No species could destroy 10,000 warships. The recordings exist, Thoxville replied, but the hegemony sealed them away. They were too ashamed to let others see their defeat. 3 survivors out of 2 million warriors. The humans could have hunted down and destroyed the entire hegemony after that. Instead, they sent medical supplies and food to hegemony colonies that were suffering from the war. Cythera's crystalline form shimmered. They showed mercy to their enemies? This is what makes them truly terrifying, Thoxville explained. They fight with the fury of a supernova, but they can stop fighting the moment their enemy surrenders. They will sacrifice their own ships to save civilians of any species. Even enemy civilians. The old reptile began walking around the circle of representatives. I have studied humans for 2,000 years. I have learned their languages and read their history books. They have a concept called protecting the innocent. This means they will die to save others, even strangers. That sounds like weakness, muttered the young Dominion officer. Does it? Thoxville asked. Imagine facing an enemy who fights not for personal gain but for ideas. Imagine warriors who become stronger when protecting others. Imagine soldiers who will ram their ships into yours if it means saving one child. He stopped walking and faced the assembly. The humans have another concept called escalation. When you hurt them a little, they hurt you back a little. But if you hurt their innocent people, if you threaten their children or their elderly, they will not stop until you are completely defeated. The Machine Empire representative spoke in electronic tones. What technology makes them so powerful? That is the strangest part, Cythera answered. Their technology is not the most advanced. Their ships are not the fastest. Their weapons are not the strongest. But they use everything they have with perfect coordination. Thoxwell nodded. Human ships fight like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Each one knows what all the others are doing. They share information instantly. They cover each other's weaknesses. They sacrifice themselves for the group without being ordered to do so. An old recording began playing. It showed a damaged human ship protecting a transport full of alien refugees. Enemy fire pounded the human vessel until its shields failed and its hull began to crack. But it never moved away from the transport. It stayed until rescue ships arrived, even though staying meant certain death for its crew. This is why we fear them, Thoxwell said quietly. Not because they are strong. Not because they are smart. We fear them because they care more about others than themselves. This makes them unpredictable. This makes them dangerous. The hall remained quiet for a long time. Finally, the representative from the Aquatic Union spoke. What do you suggest we do? We leave them alone, Thoxwell replied firmly. We respect the boundaries they have set. We do not test them. We do not challenge them. We do not give them any reason to see us as a threat to innocent people. Elder Scythara stood again. The Treaty of Valdris Prime has kept peace for 2,000 years. It states that no galactic power will interfere with human space. In return, humans stay within their borders and do not expand into our territories. But what if they decide to expand? Asked a nervous representative from the insect collective. Thoxwell smiled, showing his sharp teeth. They have had 2,000 years to conquer the galaxy. They have the power to do it. Instead, they grow food and raise children and study the stars. They only become dangerous when someone threatens what they protect. The voting was quick and unanimous. The Treaty of Valdris Prime would continue for another 1,000 years. No galactic power would approach human space with hostile intent. No military exercises would take place near their borders. No weapons testing would occur in nearby systems. As the representatives filed out of the hall, most felt relieved. The ancient wisdom had been preserved. The dangerous humans would remain in their corner of the galaxy, peaceful and isolated. But in the shadows near the back of the hall, General Kothran of the Stellar Dominion was thinking different thoughts. He had listened to the old stories with growing anger. His empire had conquered 40 worlds in the past century. His fleets were modern and powerful. His warriors were brave and well-trained. These humans sounded like myths and legends to him. Old stories told by old beings who had forgotten what real warfare looked like. The galaxy had changed in 2,000 years. Technology had improved. Military tactics had evolved. As Kothran walked back to his ship, he made a decision that would change everything. He would prove that the Council of Elders was wrong. He would show the galaxy that humans were just another species to be conquered. The ancient warning had been given. The wisdom had been shared. But some fools never learned to listen. 3 months had passed since the Great Council meeting on Valdris Prime. General Kothran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fist, staring at the tactical displays that showed the edge of human space. His 4 yellow eyes gleamed with excitement as he studied the intelligence reports his scouts had gathered. Commander Velthos, he called to his second-in-command. Show me what we have learned about these so-called dangerous humans. Velthos was a careful officer who had served under Kothran for 20 years. He approached the display table with obvious nervousness. Sir, perhaps we should reconsider this plan. The Council of Elders was very clear about— The Council of Elders is full of old cowards, Kothran interrupted. They tell ghost stories to frighten children. Show me the facts. Velthos activated the holographic display. A 3-dimensional map appeared, showing human territory as a small cluster of star systems. The humans control exactly 57 inhabited worlds. Their military consists of approximately 200 ships, most of which appear to be patrol vessels and cargo transports. Kothran smiled, showing his sharp white teeth. 200 ships? My fleet alone has 300 warships, each one more advanced than anything these humans possess. Yes, sir. Velthos continued reluctantly. Our scans show that human technology is several generations behind ours. They still use kinetic weapons, actual metal projectiles, while we have plasma cannons. Their ships use chemical rockets for maneuvering while we have quantum drives. The general walked around the display, studying each human world. Look at these planets, Velthos. Rich in rare minerals, fertile soil perfect for growing food, billions of inhabitants who could serve our empire. and they are protected by nothing more than ancient ships and old stories. On the far side of human territory, Captain Lee Min-ho sat in his command chair aboard the patrol ship Indomitable. He was a quiet man of 50 years, with silver hair and calm brown eyes that had seen many things during his 30 years of service. His ship was not impressive to look at, just a simple patrol vessel designed for long flights along the border. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim Nara from the sensor station, "I am detecting unusual energy signatures near the border. They appear to be scanning our territory." Min-ho turned his chair toward her. "How long have they been there?" 3 weeks, sir. They are trying to stay hidden, but their quantum drives leave traces we can detect." The captain stood up and walked to the main display. "Analysis, Lieutenant. What do you think they are doing?" Kim Nara had been studying the patterns for days. She was young but very smart, and Min-ho trusted her judgment. "Sir, they are mapping our defenses, recording the positions of our ships and stations. This looks like preparation for an invasion." Min-ho felt a cold weight in his stomach. It had been 2,000 years since anyone had been foolish enough to threaten human space. He had hoped it would never happen again. "Communications? Open a priority channel to Admiral Park Ji-woo at Central Command." The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Park Ji-woo. She was a stern woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes. She had been expecting this call. "Captain Lee, you are reporting the Dominion Scouts?" "Yes, Admiral. They have been watching us for weeks. Their behavior suggests they are planning something very unwise." Admiral Park's expression became grave. "Captain, I am ordering you to maintain observation but do not engage. If they are planning what we think they are planning, they will need to make the first move." "Admiral," Min-ho said carefully, "should we attempt to contact them? Perhaps we can avoid what might happen." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Captain, you know our history. You know what happened the last time someone tested us. If we show weakness now, if we appear to beg for peace, it will only encourage them." Min-ho understood. Humans had learned long ago that sometimes the kindest thing to do was to let fools make their own mistakes. "Understood, Admiral. We will maintain watch and wait." Back on the Iron Fist, General Cothran was finalizing his invasion plans. His staff officers stood around the planning table as he pointed to different human worlds. "Our first target will be the agricultural world they call New Busan," he announced. "It produces food for 12 other human colonies. If we capture it quickly, the other worlds will surrender rather than let their people starve." Colonel Zethmar, his intelligence officer, raised a concern. "General, New Busan has an orbital defense station and 2 patrol ships. Should we be worried about their defenses?" Cothran laughed loudly. "2 patrol ships and 1 old station against my entire fleet? Colonel, I am more worried about finishing this war too quickly to gain any real glory." But there was something the Dominion Scouts had not detected. Deep in space around every human world, ancient defense platforms waited in complete silence. They had been placed there 2,000 years ago and had never moved. They used no power and sent no signals. They were invisible to every known scanning method. The platforms were not just weapons. They were watchers. And they had been recording every movement of Kothran's scouts for 3 months, on Earth. In the underground command center beneath the city of Seoul, Admiral Park Ji-woo stood before a massive tactical display. The room was filled with officers from every human world, all of them connected by quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across vast distances. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "it appears the Stellar Dominion has decided to test us. Our deep space sensors show a fleet of 300 warships moving toward the New Busan system." Commander Bae Jin-ho, a veteran of many peacekeeping missions, stepped forward. "Admiral, are we activating the Omega Protocol?" The Admiral nodded slowly. "Yes, Commander. After 2,000 years of peace, someone has forced us to remember who we really are." Around the room, officers began entering codes into their control stations. Across human space, systems that had slept for millennia began to wake up. Ships that had waited in the cold darkness between stars started their engines. Weapons platforms that had drifted silent and invisible began to power their systems. The humans had spent 2,000 years preparing for this day. They had hoped it would never come. They had done everything possible to avoid it. But some lessons could only be taught through experience. Captain Lee Min-ho received the activation signal aboard the Indomitable. He looked at his young crew, men and women who had never seen real combat. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received authorization to implement Omega Protocol. This is not a drill. Lieutenant Kim Nara looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. Captain, what does this mean? Minho's expression became sad but determined. It means, Lieutenant, that someone is about to learn why the Council of Elders warns people never to cross the humans. In the Stellar Dominion fleet, General Cawthron stood confidently on his bridge as his ships prepared to enter human space. He had no idea that every movement of his fleet was being tracked by sensors he could not detect. He did not know that his every communication was being intercepted and decoded. He could not imagine that the humans had been preparing for exactly this situation for 2,000 years. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, he commanded. In 1 hour we will enter human territory and show the galaxy that the Stellar Dominion fears no one. As his fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward New Busan, the general felt proud and confident. He believed he was about to win the greatest victory in his empire's history. He had no idea he was about to provide the galaxy with a reminder of why some warnings should never be ignored. The trap was set. The prey was coming, and humanity was about to show the universe why they had remained undisturbed for 2,000 years. The hyperspace jump ended with a flash of blue light as 300 Dominion warships appeared at the outer edge of the Sol system. General Cawthron stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays show the peaceful human world spread out before him like ripe fruit ready for picking. Excellent, he said with satisfaction, just as our intelligence reported. No fleet waiting for us, no defensive formations. These humans truly are as weak as I thought. Commander Velthos checked his sensors nervously. Sir, I am detecting some unusual background readings, but nothing that appears to be military vessels. The general waved his hand dismissively. Probably just space debris or mining equipment. Set course for New Busan. All ships maintain attack formation. New Busan hung in space like a blue-green jewel, covered with vast farming areas and research stations. It was a peaceful world where families grew food that fed millions of humans across 12 star systems. The planet had no military bases, no weapons factories, and no armies. It was defended by exactly 3 things: Orbital Defense Station 3, which was 50 years old, and 2 patrol ships, the Sejong and the Gwangju. Each patrol ship carried a crew of 30 humans and weapons that looked ancient compared to Dominion technology. Captain Yoon Hyeri commanded the Sejong. She was a small woman with quick eyes and steady hands who had spent 15 years flying patrol missions along the border. She had never expected to face an invasion fleet. Captain Cho Min-jae, she called to the Gwangju over the communication system. Are you seeing what I am seeing? Captain Cho Min-jae was a veteran pilot with gray hair and a calm voice. 300 warships against 2 patrol boats and 1 space station. They really do not understand what they have done. On New Busan's surface, Colonial Administrator Bae Sumin was already implementing emergency protocols that had not been used in 2,000 years. Warning sirens echoed across the farming valleys and research centers as millions of colonists moved quickly but calmly to designated safety zones. All civilians to emergency shelters, Sumin announced over the planetary communication system. Unknown hostile forces are approaching our world. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The colonists did not panic. They had practiced these drills their entire lives, just as their parents and grandparents had done before them. They knew that somewhere in the darkness of space, help was coming. General Cawthron watched the human world grow larger on his main screen. They are not even trying to run, he said with amusement. 2 tiny ships against my entire fleet. This will be over in minutes. Sir, reported his communications officer, we are receiving a transmission from the human patrol ships. Put it on the main screen, Cawthron ordered. Captain Yoon Hyeri appeared on the display, sitting calmly in her command chair. Behind her, the bridge of the Sejong looked small and simple compared to the advanced Dominion vessels. Unknown vessels, she said in a clear, steady voice. You have entered human space without permission. You have approached a civilian world with a military fleet. This is your only warning. Turn around and leave immediately. Cawthron burst into laughter. Human, you have 2 small ships and I have 300 warships. You are in no position to give warnings. Captain Yoon's expression did not change. Sir, you have been warned by wiser beings than myself. You have chosen not to listen. What happens next is your responsibility, not ours. The general's amusement turned to anger. Prepare to fire on the patrol ships. Once they are destroyed, we will demand the planet's surrender. But as his weapons officer prepared to target the human ships, something impossible began to happen. Energy signatures started appearing throughout the Sol system. First a few dozen, then hundreds of contacts materialized on the Dominion sensors. "Sir," called Velthos in a confused voice, "where are all these ships coming from?" Kothron stared at his tactical display in growing shock. Human vessels were decloaking everywhere, behind asteroids hidden in the shadows of moons, drifting silent in the cold space between planets. Ships that had been invisible for centuries were suddenly announcing their presence. The largest vessel that appeared was massive beyond belief. The EDF flagship Chosin was 3 times the size of Kothron's biggest warship. It had been waiting, powered down and invisible in the outer system for over 500 years. "Impossible," Kothron whispered. "Our scouts surveyed this entire system. There were no ships here." On the bridge of the Chosin, Admiral Park Jiwoo stood before a tactical display that showed the positions of over 800 human vessels. Some were warships, others were support vessels, and many were types of spacecraft that the Dominion had never seen before. "General Kothron of the Stellar Dominion," she broadcast on all frequencies, her voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "You have violated the Treaty of Valdris Prime. You have entered human space with hostile intent toward civilian populations. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces and return to your own territory." From his command ship, now surrounded by human vessels that seemed to have appeared from nowhere, Kothron tried to maintain his dignity. "Human Admiral, you may have more ships than our intelligence suggested, but you are still outnumbered. Surrender now and your people will be treated fairly." Admiral Park closed her eyes for a moment as if she was sad about what had to happen next. "General, you were warned by the Council of Elders. You were told by beings far wiser than either of us. You chose not to listen." She opened a communication channel to every human ship in the system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Park. Rules of engagement are now in effect. Priority 1. Protect New Busan and its civilian population. Priority 2. Show the Dominion why the galaxy fears us." Captain Lee Minho, commanding the patrol ship Indomitable, had been watching from the edge of the system. His small vessel now found itself part of the largest human fleet assembled in 2,000 years. "General Kothron," he transmitted to the Dominion flagship, "look at your tactical displays. Every one of your ships is now targeted by multiple human vessels. Our weapons may look old to you, but they have had 2,000 years of improvement. We do not miss what we aim at." The Dominion general studied his screens in growing horror. The humans were right. Every single one of his 300 ships was being targeted by multiple enemy vessels. The targeting locks were so precise that his computers calculated a 98% probability of destruction for any ship that began hostilities. "How is this possible?" he asked Velthos. "How did they hide so many ships?" His second-in-command was studying sensor readings that made no sense. "Sir, some of these vessels appear to have been in position for centuries. They have been waiting for exactly this situation." What the Dominion did not understand was that humans had learned the most important lesson of warfare 2,000 years ago. The best battle is the one you prepare for but never have to fight. Every human world was protected by hidden fleets that had waited patiently in the cold darkness, hoping they would never be needed. But General Kothron was a proud warrior who had never been defeated. The idea of retreating without firing a shot was unthinkable to him. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare to engage the human fleet. We did not come this far to run from primitives with old weapons." Admiral Park heard the Dominion communications and sighed sadly. "So be it. All human vessels the Dominion fleet has chosen to engage. Protect our people. Show them what we learned from the Omega incident." The first Dominion plasma bolt fired toward the Sejong, beginning a battle that would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. But as the brilliant energy beam struck the small patrol ship's shields, something happened that made no sense to anyone watching. The plasma bolt seemed to make the human shield stronger instead of weaker. Captain Yoon Harry smiled grimly as she watched her defensive readings. "Thank you for the extra power," she transmitted to the Dominion fleet. "We have been waiting 2,000 years to show someone this trick." The lesson was about to begin, and the teacher was a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of turning their enemies' strength against them. The space battle that began at New Busan would later be called the most one-sided fight in galactic history, but not for the reasons General Cothran expected. As Dominion plasma bolts struck human shields across the battlefield, the impossible kept happening. The human defenses were getting stronger with each hit. Captain Kim Nara, now commanding the destroyer Incheon after her original ship was reassigned to fleet duty, watched her tactical displays with professional interest. Communications. Broadcast to all Dominion vessels on an open channel. Her voice reached every enemy ship in the system. Dominion fleet, your plasma weapons are designed to overwhelm shields through brute force. What you do not understand is that we have spent 2,000 years learning to redirect energy. Your attacks are charging our defensive systems. On the Dominion flagship Iron Fist, Commander Velthos stared at his weapon effectiveness reports with growing terror. Sir, our plasma cannons are having almost no effect. In fact, the human shields appear to be converting our energy attacks into power for their own systems. General Cothran refused to accept what his sensors were telling him. Impossible. No technology can turn an enemy's weapons against them like that. Sir, his science officer interrupted, I am analyzing the human shield frequencies. They appear to be using some form of energy conversion matrix that captures incoming plasma and redirects it to their power cores. Every shot we fire makes them stronger. But the true horror for the Dominion forces was not the human technology. It was their coordination. Human ships moved together like a single organism, sharing information instantly across the entire fleet. When one ship identified a weak point in a Dominion vessel, every human ship in range immediately knew about it. Admiral Park Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Chosin, watching tactical displays that showed the battle from every possible angle. Around her, officers coordinated the movements of 800 ships with the precision of a master musician conducting an orchestra. Tactical, she called to Commander Bae Jinho, show the Dominion what real fleet coordination looks like. Execute Pattern 7. Across the human fleet, 800 ships began moving in perfect synchronization. They did not need to communicate with each other because they all shared the same tactical network. Each captain knew exactly what every other captain was doing at all times. Captain Lee Minho aboard the Indomitable found his patrol ship working seamlessly with massive dreadnoughts and tiny fighters. Lieutenant Kim, he said to his communications officer, this is what the Dominion does not understand. They fight as individuals trying to win personal glory. We fight as one people protecting our families. The Dominion fleet tried to respond with their own coordinated attacks, but their communication systems were too slow. By the time orders reached their ships, the human formations had already changed. It was like trying to hit smoke with a hammer. Commander Velthos watched in growing panic as his tactical computers failed to predict human movements. Sir, they are sharing data across their entire fleet instantaneously. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing in real time. How? Cothran demanded. No species has developed that level of coordination without a central control system that can be targeted and destroyed. What the Dominion could not comprehend was that human coordination came not from technology but from trust. Every human captain was willing to sacrifice their own ship to protect others. Every crew member understood that their individual survival mattered less than the survival of their people. This principle revealed itself when the human destroyer Daegu took critical damage while protecting a civilian transport that had not reached safety in time. The ship's shields failed, and its hull began to crack under Dominion fire. Instead of retreating to save themselves, 3 other human vessels immediately moved to cover the Daegu's escape. The cruiser Busan, the frigate Pohang, and the corvette Jeju positioned themselves between the damaged destroyer and the enemy fleet without receiving any orders. Lieutenant Commander Song Yubin, commanding the corvette Ulsan, demonstrated why the galaxy feared humans when his ship's main weapon system failed during the battle. Instead of withdrawing from combat, he made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. All hands prepare for collision course, he announced to his crew of 28 officers. There is a civilian transport behind us with 3,000 families aboard. We are going to make sure they get home safely. The Ulsan accelerated directly toward a Dominion heavy cruiser, its engines running far beyond safe limits. The small human ship struck the enemy vessel's engine section at tremendous speed, destroying both vessels but crippling the cruiser's ability to pursue the transport. Song Yubin and his crew died in the collision, But 3,000 civilian men, women, and children lived because of their sacrifice. This was not an unusual event in the battle. Across the engagement zone, human crews made similar choices again and again. They fought not for conquest or glory, but for each other. Captain Cho Min-jae of the patrol ship Gwangju found himself facing 5 Dominion fighters that had broken through the main battle line. His small vessel was outgunned and outnumbered, but behind him was New Busan with its millions of farming families. "This is Captain Cho to New Busan Control," he transmitted. "5 enemy fighters approaching your position. Do not worry. They will not reach you." The Gwangju engaged all 5 enemy ships simultaneously, using tactics that seemed impossible. The patrol ship moved like it was dancing, sliding between enemy fire while targeting weak points with surgical precision. When the brief fight ended, all 5 Dominion fighters were disabled or destroyed. The Gwangju was heavily damaged but still protecting the planet. On New Busan's surface, Colonial Administrator Bae Suman coordinated the civilian evacuation while watching the space battle through the planet's defense sensors. "All shelter supervisors report status," she called over the emergency network. Shelter 1 reporting. 200,000 civilians safe and secure. Shelter 5 reporting. 300,000 civilians accounted for. The reports continued across the planet. In less than 2 hours, over 40 million people had moved to safety, with the calm efficiency of a people who had practiced for this moment their entire lives. But the most terrifying demonstration of human capability came when the Dominion fleet tried to target New Busan directly. General Kothran, desperate and angry, ordered his ships to fire on the planet's cities. "If we cannot defeat their fleet," he shouted, "we will force them to surrender by threatening their civilians." This was the moment the Dominion learned why the Council of Elders had warned never to threaten human innocence. Every human ship in the system immediately changed its targeting priorities. The complex battle formations dissolved as 800 vessels moved with single-minded purpose to protect New Busan. Admiral Park's voice carried across all communication channels, reaching even the Dominion ships. "General Kothran, you have just made the worst mistake possible. You have threatened our families." The human fleet's response was swift and absolute. Within minutes, every Dominion ship that had fired on the planet was either destroyed or so badly damaged it could no longer fight. The remaining enemy vessels found themselves completely surrounded by human warships, whose weapons were now targeting critical systems instead of just disabling attacks. Dominion Fleet. Admiral Park broadcast. "You have one final chance to surrender. Continue to threaten civilians and we will show you why your people should have listened to the Council of Elders." Commander Velthos looked at his tactical displays and realized the truth. The humans had been holding back. They could have destroyed the entire Dominion fleet at any time. They had been trying to end the battle with minimal casualties. But threatening civilians changed everything. "Sir," he said to General Kothran in a quiet voice, "we need to surrender. Now. Before they decide we are too dangerous to let live." The general stared at the tactical displays showing his fleet surrounded and outgunned. For the first time in his military career, he understood what real fear meant. The battle that followed General Kothran's attack on New Busan civilians would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. It became known as the New Busan lesson, a perfect example of what happened when someone threatened what humans protected. In the command center beneath Seoul on Earth, emergency sessions of the Galactic Council were being monitored in real time. The representatives who had gathered on Valdris Prime just months earlier were watching the battle through long-range sensors, and their reactions ranged from horror to grim satisfaction. Elder Thoxaval's voice echoed through the council chamber. "This is what I tried to warn you about. The humans have been merciful until now, but you do not threaten their innocent people." The first thing that shocked military observers was how quickly the human fleet adapted its tactics. When the Dominion ships tried to use their speed advantage to avoid human weapons, the humans simply predicted where they would be and fired at empty space. The enemy ships flew directly into the waiting projectiles. Captain Kim Nara, commanding the destroyer Incheon, demonstrated this principle when 3 Dominion fighters tried to use hit-and-run tactics against her ship. "Weapons Officer Lee Tae-hyun," she called. "Fire at coordinate 77 Alpha." "Ma'am." There are no enemy ships at those coordinates, the young officer replied. There will be, she said calmly. 3 seconds later, the Dominion fighters arrived at exactly those coordinates, flying directly into a spread of kinetic projectiles that disabled all 3 vessels. But the technological superiority was not what made other species fear humans. It was their tactical doctrine that seemed to come from a completely different understanding of warfare. When the Dominion heavy cruiser Dominator targeted the human medical ship Mercy, which was rescuing survivors from both fleets, the response was immediate and absolute. 12 human warships surrounded the Dominator within minutes. Captain Park Si-jin, commanding the battleship Turtle Ship, transmitted directly to the Dominion cruiser. Dominion vessel, you have fired on a medical ship displaying universal rescue symbols. This violates every law of civilized warfare. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Dominator's captain, Colonel Hrexdan, responded with typical Dominion arrogance. Human vessel, that ship was aiding your forces. It is therefore a legitimate military target. Negative, Captain Park replied. That ship was rescuing your people as well as ours. Check your sensor logs. When the Dominion officers verified this claim, they found something that shook them to their core. The human medical ship had indeed been rescuing Dominion survivors, treating their wounded, and providing them with the same level of care given to human casualties. This was when many Dominion officers began to understand what they were really fighting. Commander. Velthos pulled up casualty reports on his command screen and stared at them in disbelief. Sir, according to our sensors, the humans have been retrieving our escape pods and treating our wounded throughout this entire battle. General Kothran looked at the data with confusion. Why would they waste resources saving enemy personnel? Sir, his science officer interrupted, I think we have fundamentally misunderstood what we are fighting. These humans do not see us as enemies to be destroyed. They see us as people who made a mistake. This realization spread throughout the Dominion fleet as officers began to understand what they were witnessing. Human ships would disable enemy vessels and then immediately dispatch rescue craft to save the crews. Human medical ships treated Dominion wounded alongside their own people. Human supply ships even provided food and water to damaged Dominion vessels, whose life support systems had failed. The humans were fighting a war while simultaneously conducting a massive humanitarian rescue. Operation Lieutenant Commander Song Hyun-woo, commanding the frigate Gwanak, exemplified this approach when he encountered a crippled Dominion destroyer that was venting atmosphere and losing power. Dominion vessel, this is the human ship Gwanak, he transmitted. Your life support appears to be failing. We are prepared to assist with evacuation if needed. The Dominion captain, Commander Velkith, was suspicious. Human ship, why would you help us? We are your enemies. Because, Song replied simply, you have families who want you to come home alive. War does not change that fact. Within an hour, the Gwanak had transferred emergency supplies to the Dominion ship and helped repair their life support systems. The destroyer's crew of 400 people lived because a human commander chose compassion over tactical advantage. This pattern repeated across the battlefield, and it had a profound effect on Dominion morale. It is one thing to fight an enemy who hates you. It is another thing entirely to fight people who are trying to save your life while defeating you. But the moment that truly demonstrated why the galaxy feared humans came when a damaged Dominion cruiser began falling toward New Busan's surface. The ship's engines had failed, and its crew was trapped aboard a vessel that would kill millions of civilians when it crashed into the planet's farming districts. Captain Lee Minho, aboard the patrol ship Indomitable, was the closest human vessel. His small ship had no tractor beam powerful enough to change the cruiser's course, and there was no time for larger ships to reach the scene. All crew, prepare for ramming speed, he announced to his 30-person crew. We are going to push that cruiser away from the planet. Lieutenant Kim Nara, his communications officer, looked up from her station with wide eyes. Captain, the mass differential is too great. Even at maximum velocity, we cannot change their course enough to matter. Minho smiled sadly. We cannot change their course, Lieutenant, but we can change ours. The Indomitable accelerated toward the falling cruiser, but instead of ramming it, Captain Lee executed a maneuver that military tacticians still study today. He positioned his ship between the cruiser and the planet, then used his engines to create a continuous thrust that gradually altered both ships' trajectories. For 47 minutes, the small patrol ship pushed against the massive cruiser, its hull heating from the strain and its engines running far beyond safe limits. The Indomitable's structural integrity was failing, but Captain Lee held course. When rescue ships finally arrived to complete the course correction, they found the Indomitable's hull cracked and its engines destroyed. But New Busan was safe and both ships' crews were alive. Captain Lee transmitted his final report before his ship lost power. Mission accomplished. Dominion cruiser and crew safe. New Busan protected. No casualties. This single act of self-sacrifice to save both human civilians and enemy soldiers was broadcast across the Dominion fleet. The effect on enemy morale was devastating. Many Dominion officers began to question why they were fighting people who would die to save their enemies. Commander, Velthos finally understood what Elder Thoxaval had tried to explain to the Galactic Council. Sir, he said to General Kothron, these humans are not fighting us because they hate us. They are fighting us because we threatened innocent people. They would do the same thing to protect our civilians if someone attacked Dominion worlds. The general stared at his tactical displays, watching human ships continue to rescue Dominion survivors, even as the battle raged around them. For the first time in his military career, he began to doubt the righteousness of his cause. What kind of species, he wondered aloud, saves their enemies while fighting them? The answer to that question was about to change everything both sides understood about war, honor, and what it meant to be truly strong. The battle ended not with the destruction of the Dominion fleet, but with something far more powerful, their complete surrender after witnessing what true strength looked like. General Kothron stood on his damaged bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride and the knowledge that he had learned the hardest lesson in galactic history. All Dominion vessels, he transmitted across his fleet, his voice heavy with defeat and newfound understanding. Cease all hostile actions. Surrender to human forces immediately. Admiral Park Jiwoo's response came within seconds, broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Dominion forces, your surrender is accepted. Medical and rescue ships are being dispatched to assist your damaged vessels. Your wounded will receive the same care as our own people. This final act of mercy broke whatever resistance remained in the Dominion ranks. Across their fleet, officers who had served their empire with pride for decades began to understand what real honor looked like. In the hours that followed, the galaxy watched something unprecedented in military history. Human medical ships worked alongside Dominion vessels to treat the wounded from both sides. Human engineers helped repair damaged Dominion ships so they could safely return home. Human supply vessels provided food, water, and medical supplies to enemy forces without asking for anything in return. Colonial Administrator Bay, Suman coordinated the relief efforts from New Busan's surface with the same efficiency she had used to protect her own people. Emergency shelters that had housed human families were opened to accommodate Dominion survivors who needed medical treatment on the planet's surface. Dr. Kim Ji-won, she called to the head of New Busan Medical Center. How many Dominion personnel do we have in treatment? 843 injured, Administrator. They are receiving the same level of care as our own wounded. Many of them seem confused by this. Dr. Kim was right to notice their confusion. Dominion military doctrine taught that defeated enemies should expect harsh treatment at best. The concept of treating enemy wounded as honored guests was completely foreign to their understanding of warfare. Captain Cho Min-jae of the patrol ship Gwangju, his vessel badly damaged but still functional, found himself assigned to escort Dominion survivors to the medical facilities. During the journey, a young Dominion officer asked him a question that would be repeated throughout their fleet. "Human captain," the young alien said, "why are you helping us? We came here to conquer your world and enslave your people." Captain Cho considered the question carefully before answering. "Because you have families waiting for you to come home. Because you were following orders from leaders who made a mistake. Because showing mercy to defeated enemies is what separates civilization from barbarism." The young officer was quiet for a long time. "In the Dominion military, we are taught that mercy is weakness." "In the human military," Captain Cho replied, "we are taught that cruelty is weakness. It takes no strength to hurt someone who cannot fight back. It takes great strength to help someone who tried to hurt you." This conversation was repeated hundreds of times across the rescue operations as human personnel worked with Dominion survivors. Each exchange planted seeds of understanding that would grow into something much larger. 6 months after the battle, The Galactic Council convened another emergency session on Valdris Prime. This time, however, they had an unexpected witness. Former General Kothron, stripped of his rank and exiled by his own people for the military disaster, stood before the assembled representatives. But he was not there as a prisoner or a refugee. He had requested permission to address the council personally. "Honored elders," he began, his 4 yellow eyes no longer filled with arrogance but with hard-earned wisdom. "I stand before you as proof of human restraint. I invaded their territory with 300 warships. I threatened their civilians. I ordered attacks on their medical vessels. By every law of war, they had the right to execute me and destroy my entire fleet." Elder Thoxaval leaned forward in his ancient chair. "Yet here you stand alive and whole. Tell the council what the humans did instead." Kothran's voice grew stronger as he continued. "They defeated us completely within hours. But then they saved us. They rescued our wounded. They repaired our ships. They sent us home with supplies and medical care. They treated us better than our own empire treats its loyal officers." A murmur went through the assembly. This level of mercy toward defeated enemies was almost unknown in galactic history. "The humans could have made an example of us," the former general continued. "They could have destroyed my fleet and broadcast the recordings to warn other species. Instead, they chose to demonstrate their values through actions rather than threats." Elder Sithara of the Crystalline Collective spoke next, her translucent form shimmering with reflected light. "Former General, what is your assessment of human military capability after experiencing it firsthand?" The question brought a grim smile to Kothran's face. "Honored Elder, my assessment is that every species in the galaxy should be grateful that humans choose to be peaceful. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, but they disguise it to appear simple. Their coordination is perfect, but they make it look effortless. Their strategic thinking operates on timescales that we cannot comprehend." He paused before delivering his most important observation. "But their greatest weapon is not technology or tactics. It is their absolute commitment to protecting innocent life, even innocent life that belongs to their enemies. This makes them unpredictable and ultimately unconquerable." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans have spent 2,000 years preparing for war while hoping they would never need to fight, Kothran concluded. "They are ready for any conflict we might imagine, but they would rather use that readiness to protect others than to conquer them." Elder Thoxval stood slowly, his ancient bones creaking. "The Treaty of Valdris Prime has protected galactic peace for 2 millennia. Based on what we have learned from this incident,
how should the council proceed?"
The vote was unanimous and swift. The Treaty of Valdris Prime would be renewed for another 1,000 years with even stronger language about respecting human territory and civilian populations. But more importantly, a new protocol was established. Any species considering military action near human space would be required to meet with survivors of the New Busan incident first. Captain Lee Minho, his patrol ship Indomitable fully repaired after its heroic rescue mission, received a commendation from Admiral Park Jiwoo during a ceremony attended by representatives from 12 species. "Captain Lee," the admiral said as she pinned the medal to his uniform, "you embodied the finest traditions of human service. You risked everything to save both our people and our enemies." Minho's response was typical of the humility that made humans both beloved and feared across the galaxy. "Admiral, I only did what anyone would do when innocent lives were at stake. The fact that some of those lives belonged to people shooting at us did not change our duty to protect them." In the months that followed, something unexpected began happening throughout Dominion space. Officers who had survived the New Busan incident started implementing changes in their military's treatment of prisoners and civilians. The concept of honorable conduct toward enemies began spreading through their ranks like a beneficial infection. The Stellar Dominion's government initially tried to suppress these changes, but they faced an unexpected problem. The officers who had experienced human mercy were now their most experienced combat veterans, and their loyalty to the Empire had been transformed into loyalty to higher principles. Within 2 years, the Dominion had become one of the most humanitarian military forces in the galaxy. The final entry in the Galactic Council's official record of the New Busan incident read, "The humans of Sol 3 remain what they have always been, a species that fights not for conquest but for protection. They are dangerous not because they are powerful, but because they are right. Their greatest victory was not the defeat of the Dominion fleet, but the transformation of their enemies into allies. This council reaffirms its ancient wisdom: never cross the humans. Not because they cannot be defeated, but because defeating them requires becoming something no civilized species should want to become. The Treaty of Valdris Prime was renewed, and humanity returned to their quiet worlds to continue tending their gardens and raising their children. But throughout the galaxy, military academies began teaching a new lesson to their cadets. True strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies, the lesson taught. True strength is the ability to turn your enemies into friends while protecting everything you hold dear. And in the deepest archives of human space, new defensive platforms were quietly deployed, and new fleets took up their patient vigil in the cold darkness between stars. Because humans had learned the most important lesson of all: the price of peace is eternal vigilance. And the price of mercy is strength so overwhelming that no one would dare test it twice. The galaxy was safe, protected by a species that would rather die than see innocents suffer, and strong enough to ensure that such choices were rarely necessary. Some lessons, after all, only need to be taught once.